Nexa, formerly known as Answer One, is a leading virtual receptionist and answering service provider for law firms. Learn more by giving them a call at 800-267-9371 or online at nexa.com.
Welcome to the ABA Journal Legal Rebels podcast, where we talk to men and women who are remaking the legal profession, changing the way the law is practiced, and setting standards that will guide us into the future.
Social media and the internet have opened up new streams of advertising for lawyers. No longer do they have to rely on the tried and true methods of highway billboards and daytime TV ads. For a fraction of what it would cost to utilize one of those traditional methods, lawyers can advertise on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, or any number of additional media. But having so many avenues of advertising at their disposal can also make it difficult for lawyers to stand out from the crowd. Anyone can dream about creating a viral video or blog post, but actually doing it can be like winning the lottery. So when Waco, Texas-based lawyers Will Hudson and Chris Harris got over 530,000 views on YouTube for Don't Eat Your Weed, a song about the potential legal consequences of swallowing marijuana in front of police officers, it was almost like seeing their numbers come up. Since then, they have continued writing and recording songs on a range of subjects, including Miranda rights, what happens if a cop pulls you over for suspicion of driving under the influence, and what recourse you might have if your insurance company won't cover damages to your home. I'm Victor Lee, an assistant managing editor with the ABA Journal. On today's episode of the Legal Rebels podcast, we'll be talking to Will Hudson and Chris Harris of Hudson & Harris. Will, Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell me a bit about yourselves. How did you meet, and what made you decide to team up together and start practicing law?
About 10 years ago, this is Chris, about 10 years ago, I actually moved in office from a nearby town, McGregor, which I'm sure nobody in your area has heard of, into Waco, and I was renting space from Will Hudson. And it didn't take long to figure out that our business interests kind of lined up pretty well. Will actually is a criminal defense attorney. I'm not. I do almost exclusively civil law. So as a partnership, we didn't walk all over each other. And it also, from a personality standpoint, I got along with him better than any partner I'd ever picked.
That's exactly right. And then we found out that we sing well together. We were actually driving to an immigration law seminar in Houston, and a song came on the radio, and Chris began to sing, and I began to harmonize, and our legal assistant in the back seat, her eyes kind of got big, and from there it just kind of took off.
So, what made you come up with the idea to start recording songs about legal issues? Was it just from that moment you just started, the idea came to you and you thought, oh, this might be a fun way to kind of combine our practice with our interest in music?
Well, I'd like to take credit for that, but not really. We had a friend of mine who's an IT professional. Shout out to Badger, Steve Watkins. He was helping us with our internet and trying to get a website visible to the world. And he encouraged us to write legal blogs. I mean, we write for a living. But it was tedious, and to be honest with you, I wasn't extremely motivated to do that. And so my friend, who's known me for 15 years, said, as kind of as a joke, he said, "Well, why don't you do a song about something?" That piqued my interest. I come from a kind of a musical family. All my kids are involved in music. It's a huge part of my hobby life. And so we did one, and it got tens of views. And that was enough for us to do another one. And the second one we did was this "Don't Eat Your Weed" song. And you're right, on YouTube it had 500,000 views. It also got picked up by like Now This and some other mediums. At some point I tracked it. It had several million views. And we thought, well, this is fun and easy. And so then we just kept doing.
Gotcha. Like just looking through some of your videos on YouTube, it seems like, it's a pretty simple setup. You have two guitars. I think one of your clips had a bassist. Very kind of a folksy kind of style, a little bit of country, I guess. Like, yeah. Who would you say were some of your musical influences, as far as like how you write your songs and how you record your songs?
Oh, gosh. I love Americana music, which is kind of the new way to say folk music. But I also like some, like 70s country type stuff. So Waylon Jennings, would be, Willie Nelson, those kind of guys. Their songs, said something, and they were pretty simply produced. Plus it's cheap. So candidly, and I don't play keyboards. So my musical tastes line up with our musical abilities.
Yeah, I worked in radio for a number of years before I became a lawyer, and I've always been a country music fan. Grew up with country music. I actually come from a fairly musical family as well. To be quite honest, a bunch of Arkansas hillbillies who love bluegrass and
Go Rednecks.
And so that's Chris and I we just work well together in music, and it was easy. It felt very natural.
Hello, listeners. This is Lee Rawls from the ABA Journal. We're going to take a quick break to hear a message from our sponsor.
If you're missing calls, appointments, and potential clients, it's time to work with Nexa Professional. More than just an answering service, Nexa's virtual receptionists are available 24/7 to schedule appointments, qualify leads, respond to emails, integrate with your firm's software, and much more. Nexa ensures your clients have the experience they deserve. Give them a call at 800-267-9371 or visit them at nexa.com/podcast for a special offer.
Welcome back to the ABA Journal's Legal Rebels podcast. We now return to our show, which is already in progress.
So, how much work goes into writing and recording one of your songs? And do you have to submit it to the Bar Association beforehand to make sure it complies with ethical rules?
To this point, we haven't, and here's why. We actually, I heard the intro, but we actually don't consider these advertisements.
Okay.
We consider them public service announcements. And the very first one that we did was probably closer to an advertisement because it did contain our phone number because it happened to rhyme with a line. And we've been asked by several members of the state bar to perform at bar functions. I've never had anybody make it an issue. It occurred to us at some point that we might need to, but then when I looked at the rules, it appears that you don't have to clear blog entries, for example, on legal topics with the advertising committee in the state of Texas. So I kind of put them under this. If somebody tells us differently, obviously we'll do that. But to this point, nobody has.
And have you seen any bump in business as a result of these videos? Like, do you track them? And yeah.
It's pretty funny. Like I told you, I'm not sure that it helps my real estate and probate practice to be known as the singing weed lawyer. But Will has certainly gotten an uptick in cases from not just this area, but kind of from all over the state as a result of that.
Yeah, I've had a little bit. I can't say that it has seriously increased my bottom line. I have gotten a lot of phone calls, web inquiries through our website, centraltexaslegal.com. And yeah, I've been hired on a few. I've had some really crazy calls. I had a guy from Houston who wanted to have me come down and just spend the evening walking around with him during some kind of illegal auto racing that they do on a certain day of the year. Claims that the HPD doesn't condone it, but they kind of turn their back to it and offered me a huge amount of money, and it just sounded crazy. And I said, no, thanks.
But I will say this, although, I can't say that there's a huge uptick in business. What has happened is that our website relevance has gone up because I now get calls from a much kind of a broader base and things that I actually do. And what happens is when people see those videos, it's typically, I think, intimidating for people to call a lawyer. And part of what we do, I've seen just break down a lot of those barriers. They feel like they get a sense for who we are before they ever talk to us. And that's huge because it does make the phone ring, and it makes them feel like they can. Trust is huge in our business. We do our best to earn it, but it's nice if you can get a little bit of a leg up by giving people a sense of your personality and your business structure, through something goofy like a song.
Gotcha. And just looking through your YouTube page and the various videos that you have. Obviously, a wide-ranging practice and lots of different subject matters that you guys deal with. How do you decide what topics to sing about?
A lot of times the legislature is our cue, like with the latest hemp legislation that happened here in Texas. That was just a huge talking point. Outside of that, the very first one that was successful, I just sat around and said, Will, do you have any ideas? And he actually is the one who came up and said, I'm tired of people getting, charged with tampering with evidence when they have a misdemeanor amount of weed. And so I mean, that one was pretty organic. Outside of that, I try and look at areas of my practice. I still need to do one. I've talked about it for years. One of the most confusing aspects of the law in Texas, outside of mechanics liens, is going to be auto insurance. Some states are no fault. Texas is not a no fault state. And I don't sell insurance, but I sure understand things like PIP and UM and UIM. And you start throwing letters at people and they really don't understand what type of insurance they have. I feel like that could be simplified a lot. We've got a few topics that are, still kind of ready to go. And that's one of them. But most of them just come from our practice and things that we see over and over and over again.
And obviously, since you guys play so much and you are both accomplished guitarists and whatnot, do you guys play in a band on your free time? Do you, pursue music when you're not at the office and not practicing law?
Absolutely. We actually started a band. How long has it been?
I don't know, a few months. It's called Alamo Basement, which is, it's an indicator of how old somebody might be. If they get that reference from a Pee Wee Herman movie back in the 90s, then they probably will like the kind of music that we do, which is kind of Eagles, Steve Miller, Johnny Cash. I mean, but we do some Radiohead and, just things that we like. And
of course, our songs.
Yeah, and our legal songs too. We actually have a record. We did a crowdfunding thing through Kickstarter, and we raised about $5,000 in order to record 10 of our songs, which is going to be released, I think, in March. And the reason I mention that right here is because our band, our drummer, our bass player, and my son, who's a guitar player in Austin, who comes up and plays with our band, they're all going to be on this record. And that is truly a joyous thing for me personally. I don't know how Will feels about it.
No, it's wonderful when you can have the same artists that you perform with regularly provide the instrumentation for your album.
Well, and we're able to tell ourselves also, whenever we're playing a show on a Friday night in Waco, Texas, and taking time away from our wives, that this is almost a business promotion. It's almost business is the way that we look at that. So it's wonderful.
So finally, I was hoping you guys would be able to perform one of your songs for us. Can you tell us a bit about what song you're going to do and how you came up with it?
Yeah, this is kind of the most recent one that we've done. It's called Nobody Knows, and it relates to the recent kind of legalization of hemp in Texas, for lack of a better phrase. It's actually not legal unless you have some kind of an agricultural license. But the truth is, what they did was they took cannabis, which is illegal in Texas, and made it legal if it has a concentration of THC of 0.3% or less. And the purpose of the song is to let people know we do not encourage people to break the law, and we certainly don't encourage people to lie to police. But unless you've had it tested, you don't necessarily know what your cannabis is. So that's where this came from. It's called Nobody Knows.
Great. So performing Nobody Knows, here's Will Hudson and Chris Harris.
Is it hemp? Or is it weed? Is the THC over 0.3? You don't know, you're not a testing facility. Could be hemp unless you call it weed. Nobody knows if it's pot or if it's hemp. They've got to show the THC content. Is it pot or is it not? Is the THC a little or a lot? Nobody knows. You don't have to lie when a cop says, "What's this?" After all, you're not a freaking scientist. Might be hemp if you don't call it weed. They've got to test it unless you can see. Nobody knows if it's pot or if it's hemp. They've got to show the THC content. Is it pot or is it not? Is THC a little or a lot? Nobody knows. And if a cop says, "Tell me what this is, or you're gonna get arrested," just say, "I can't be sure, you're gonna have to test it," because they've got to prove it. They can't do it unless you admit it, so don't be an idiot. nobody knows.
If it's pot or if it's hemp,
They've got to show
the THC content.
Is it pot or is it not? Is the THC a little or a lot? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Thank you so much for that great performance. I really enjoyed it and hope those listening did as well. If our listeners would like to get in contact with you, Will and Chris, what's the best way to do it?
Probably our website, which is centraltexaslegal.com, and it is all spelled out, no abbreviations.
Great. This has been another episode of Legal Rebels Podcast. Victor Lee, signing off.
If you'd like more information about today's show, please visit legalrebels.com, legaltalknetwork.com, subscribe via iTunes and RSS, find both the ABA Journal and Legal Talk Network on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or download the free apps from ABA Journal and Legal Talk Network in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.